Hi, and welcome to today's Skill Builder on Psychology Research Tips. We're going to be talking about 3 to 4 databases that will get you started with almost any psychology project. So hopefully you'll learn a lot of great things today. So the first thing that I want to talk about when we're jumping into the best databases for psychological research is how to access them. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to access the McCain Library list of databases. So notice that that is right here on the library homepage. It is databases A to Z. So if we were to click on that, it's going to present a list to us. So at the top, you would see that it says subject, content type, and by vendor. So we want to click on subject and then scroll down to where it says psychology. And what this is going to do is it's going to present a list of about 31 databases that we think are heavily related to psychology. And we have also added the very best ones to the top. So these are some of the ones that I'm going to talk about today. I'm not going to talk about Nature. Even though I think it's a fantastic database, it's more of a current awareness thing. So I highly recommend that if you're in the field of psychology, go ahead and check in with Nature once a month. It's a journal and it's got fantastic content. It's considered to be one of the best journals, and it's not just journal content, it is also news. So it's reporting on interesting studies that have been done recently. And it's across all of the sciences. So it's a really great place to get started. So when you're looking at this list, you can see that at the top there was best bets, but also as you scroll down, you'll see other individual databases, and each of them has a description. The librarians here at McCain Library have written these descriptions for you. So we're trying to tell you exactly why you might be interested in using that database. And so the first database that I want to talk about is PsycInfo. That's my number one. Before I go into it, I'm just going to list in order the ones that I prefer for psychological research. So PsycInfo is number one. It's the best starting point for any topic. Number two is PubMed or Medline. And you'll notice that those are two different databases. So technically, I have a tie, but honestly, you'll find out in just a moment that they're kind of the same thing. They're different variations of the same tool, and I'll teach you more about that in just a moment. So those two tools are the best if you're doing anything that's biomedical. So if you're doing a topic like college students and happiness, PsycInfo is going to be your best starting point. If you're trying to understand depression, anxiety, moods, and those kind of things that relate to psychology, PubMed and Medline will be most helpful because that's more of a biomedical, even though PsycInfo can help you with that. So number three is Web of Science. And so if we're fast enough, we're going to get there. This is an awesome tool. It's comprehensive of all the science literature. So psychology falls within that. And so what I love about this database is there's no full text, which I know that sounds crazy, but what it does have is it lists from almost all the major journals, the articles that have been published in there since 1995. And what you can do is once you've done your subject search, you can resort that information by who has cited an article the most. So it's really useful for getting a nice overview of all the literature and has some amazing limiters. So let's get started looking at these databases. The first one, as I mentioned, that we're going to talk about is PsycInfo. So PsycInfo is probably the most comprehensive psychological literature database that there is. As you can see from the description, there are 22,000 or 2,200 journals in there, and most of these come from the APA journals. Some of the content will be available in full text, and some of the content will just be citations. I want you to stop worrying about whether the full text is in the article because in the database, because anytime you know that an article exists, we can get it for you. So there's a couple of different ways we can do that. And if you're not sure you know how to do it, it's very simple, but meet with a librarian and they will show you the simple techniques for finding the full text of an article. So definitely consider PsycInfo to be your top one. So these other ones, notice these would be 3 of the ones that appear in the list below our best bets. And I don't name these as being my favorites. Part of that is because we basically just subscribe to these because they give us extra full text. So without psych articles, there's several American Psychological Association journals that we won't have access to in PsycInfo. We'd have the citation for it, but we wouldn't have the full text. So we want to make sure that you get the full text as soon as possible, which is why we have those. So you don't really have to cross-search those. Let me talk about that a little bit more. This is an example of a search in PsycInfo, a search in psych articles, and a search in the database Psychology and Behavioral Collection. You can see that they all look the same, and that's because they're owned by the company EBSCOhost. But what you're seeing, they have different content in it. So if you remember from the descriptions, this database has just a couple hundred journals in it that it covers. This one definitely has more, but this has the most. And so that's the one that we're probably going to get the most search results from. So this search is narrowed to 2016 to 2023, and I searched in all of them for happiness in college students. And you can see that PsycInfo produced the most results. There's 378 in that database, 14 in psych articles, and 104 in Psychology and Behavioral Collection. I have not double checked that every single one of the articles that was in Psychology and Behavioral Collection was in PsycInfo, but I did double check these 14, and all of them were in PsycInfo. So again, I'm emphasizing start with PsycInfo. It's going to give you the most significant articles from the most significant journals very quickly. All right, so the things that you need to know when you're searching a database that's like PsycInfo. PsycInfo is in the EBSCOhost system, and it's also the same system that if you use our Discover tool on the library homepage, it's run by the same system, but they have different defaults. So the default mode in PsycInfo is Boolean phrase, and the default mode in Discover is find all my search terms. So basically what that means is that if you were in Discover, it would just search for your keywords and make sure that all of them were in the article before it returned the results to you. In PsycInfo, the default mode is Boolean phrase, and unless you separate the keywords with and, it's going to treat it like a phrase, and that means that it's going to look for those words within 3 words of each other. So in some ways, that's helpful. Developmental psychology, psychology, development, those could be seen within 3 words of each other, but they would also be treated as a phrase. So it's a much more narrow search. So if you don't feel like you're getting what you need in PsycInfo, pay attention to the search modes. Learn a little bit more about how to do Boolean searching, or just change the search mode to find all my search terms if that's what works better for you. This is how Boolean works. You can see this is what advanced search looks like in both Discover and in PsycInfo. So I have a search here where I have hunger, leadership, development, program, and assessment. I've separated each of these with the word and that is because I definitely want each of these concepts, so I'm treating each box like a concept. I'm going to be talking about, you can tell what my topic is. It's the assessment of leadership development programs for food insecurity. So that's what I'm looking at. And by setting it up this way, I'm requiring that one of these words will appear in the article because they're all connected by and. But if I use the word or within the box, this lets me give the database alternatives. So not only does Boolean help you in terms of identifying, giving you a better search for phrases, because it lets you search within the 3 words of each other to see if those words are found close together. So it's a more narrow search that way. You can also use Boolean to broaden your search by giving them alternatives. So notice that the concepts in each of my boxes hasn't changed. I've just expanded what the database can pull from it. So now the database is going to pull one item from each of these areas. So something from each box has to appear, but it could be food insecurity, leaders, training, programs, and assessment, or it could be food security, leaders, training, program, and assessment, or it could be food security, leadership, development, programs, and assessment. You can see how the combination is. And if these words in each, it's not going to limit it to just one of the words in each box. If there are more words that are in the box that appear in the article, those will also still return results. So you can still have an article that is about food insecurity and development, but also mentions training. So those are one of the things that I would say in PsycInfo is a good way to start thinking about your search. Know that it is defaulting to phrase-based searching, and you have the option to change whether you want to turn that back to the type of searching you were doing in Discover, which is very similar to how Google searches, where you can just type in your keywords and it's going to find all those keywords in any order. Or you can amp up your search by learning some Boolean searching and utilizing this OR to provide the database with alternative terms that might be relevant to your search. So if you don't like typing out OR all the time, there's certain words like development that have lots of different word endings. So here you can see develop, development, developing, develop. A lot of our databases, including PsycInfo, will let you use a truncation symbol, and in this case, it is an asterisk in PsycInfo. And by putting it right at where the root of the word ends, you're able to get a search that finds all of these. So it's going to give the database the option, just like we did in the other screen, where we typed in develop or development or developing. We don't have to type all that out anymore. Just typing this in will automatically search for those alternative word endings. So that is really a cool feature. All right, so now on to search tip number 2 in PsycInfo. So another thing to know about the default searching in PsycInfo that might trip you up is that it's only searching for the keywords that you enter in the title, the citation, abstract, and subject field. Now, I know it seems like you wanted to search the full text, but if when you're looking through your search results, you are looking for each of the keywords that you entered in the description of the article that's listed under the title or the subject terms, then you probably actually want to have this limited. So in Discover, it does not have this checked. Sorry, it does have this checked. So it indicates as a default that it's going to search the full text of the article, and that's why you get so many things. But in PsycInfo, it's not checked. So that means that it's a much more narrow search. Again, you have the power to change this. So you can always go to the search modes under the advanced search screen and click also search within the full text. That's going to broaden your search. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, and this is when we're getting into my absolute favorite tips. If you again go into the advanced search features of PsycInfo, you can see that at the bottom, it gives you ways to limit. Now, I don't want you to go crazy with these limits. These are a couple of the ones that I really like and that I've used with students. So I had a set of students that were looking at transgender youth, people who were in high school, and trying to understand their relationships and their sense of safety. So we were able to limit in PsycInfo their search to adolescents. This doesn't mean that there won't be other age groups in the article, but definitely that's a significant part of the article. So anytime you use these, it's going to make sure the population you want is there. So the age group, or if you're doing something that's related to depression and you don't want to see a bunch of studies about mice, then you can narrow it down to human. And my absolute favorite thing to do with limiters, especially when I'm getting started with a topic, is to narrow the methodology down to literature review. Because usually I don't know much about the topic, getting a literature review, which is going to summarize and synthesize many of the major articles, especially if it's new, many of the major recent articles, and break them into concepts of how that issue is studied, then I can quickly see what are some options for me in terms of how I can narrow my focus. It lists articles that I can look up and include into my search. So it's just a great starting point. This also does have empirical research in there. So the limiters are not just limited to, you don't have to plan every part of your search at the beginning and use advanced search to access the limiters. Once you run a search, here's an example of the search. On the left-hand side, there will be limiters there, and you can narrow it down. So here's an example of methodology. And you can see that I can narrow it down to a quantitative study. I have students who want me to find them an empirical study. Again, you can't see review on here. That's going to be further down. I could click on show more, and it would create a larger list of different types of studies I can choose from. Down here, there's population. You can see age and gender. So there's a lot of useful things that you can use in PsycInfo for limiting your search. So you've got a lot of powerful things so far. First off, you know that with PsycInfo, you're getting the best journals in the field of psychology. Second, you know that it's going to be a very narrow search, but you have the ability to expand it in several different ways, either using the Boolean operator or to expand your search, using a truncation symbol, or changing where it's locating the terms that you're searching for to see whether they're available in the full text or limiting it down to the abstract. All right, so the final thing that I want to talk about that's in PsycInfo, and this is something that I just adore. Sometimes you don't know exactly what the term is that you want to use. And so using the thesaurus that's in PsycInfo can help make sure that you're going to get exactly the term that is appropriate and used consistently throughout the database for that topic. So let's take an example. Notice that when you're in the database, it's going to be listed up here. And when I click on that, it's going to open up a list that gives me a new search box. So here, before I was looking at college students and happiness. Right now, I just want to look at the concept of college student and see what kind of terms are available. I put it as relevancy rank, and this is the list that appears. So these are some alternatives, but it does look like college students is a standard term that's used. It could have been undergraduates. So this is helpful to see that this is an appropriate term. And now when I click on it, it's going to show me how long it's been used. So here it shows that it's been used since 1967. And it defines it. It describes that it's students attending an institution of higher education. I know this sounds really simple, but you could also be looking for the word relationship, and it would give you different types of relationships. And then it would help you. So I think that there's one when I'm searching for relationships, it shows couples, and then it defines what a couple is. And that is really helpful. The other thing that's helpful about it is that it gives you broader and narrower terms. It tells you what it's used for. So remember, I had an option to use undergraduate, but now I know that this is the term that any article about undergraduates or college students will always be tagged with college students, as long as it was published after 1967 or 57. And so also, as I mentioned before, it gives me narrower terms. So maybe I wanted something more specific. Maybe I was very interested in college athletes and not necessarily college students. So it helps me narrow it. It also helps me broaden my search. So those are the major things that I love about PsycInfo that I think will get you started. Now, moving into the next two databases, remember I said that these are kind of the same. So let's get into that. These are going to be for the biomedical literature. So this is when you're thinking about conditions that people might have and understanding that. So let's take a look. So first off, PubMed is provided by the National Library of Medicine. It's a free tool. It's been around for forever, definitely since the internet began. And honestly, they've been, PubMed is the umbrella of multiple databases. So I'll get to that in a second. So PubMed is accessible online for free. You can just Google it, go to PubMed. Medline with full text is technically a portion of PubMed, but we have a full text subscription to it, and you can get to that from the database's A to Z list. Unfortunately, you will not have access to this one after you graduate. So your professors typically want you to use PubMed because it's something that you're going to have access to, and you might as well start learning about it now. What's available in PubMed, as I mentioned, it's an overarching tool. So it has Medline. So the other tool we're looking at is Medline with full text. So Medline is part of it. They also have PubMed also has a bookshelf, and they also have a content area called PubMed Central, which is a range of different things. The Medline is the historic library for a selected number of journals that they think are the most important ones to track. And so they've been tracking these since the 70s when it was in print format. And so this is the core of PubMed. What you're searching for when you're trying to find scholarly literature, these are going to be the best database, the best journals that you can access on the topic. But there's also a lot of open source journals that have emerged and other types of materials that have made their way through the internet into different formats that are still scholarly or still considered reputable, but they're listed in PubMed Central. So when you search PubMed, you're searching both Medline, PubMed Central, and their bookshelf. So Medline is just one component of the whole PubMed system. The thing is, though, if you actually do a search in Medline and PubMed, the differences might not be that different. So in PubMed, I got 114 results, and in Medline, I got 113. So one thing to know is I am using specialized terminology that's designed for Medline. So that's part of the reason why it turns out this way. But I just wanted you to know that both of them are going to be useful. The real trick is, which one do you prefer? What interface looks better to you? So I'm going to tell you again, most of your professors prefer PubMed, mainly because it's the tool you're going to always have access to. The big downside to PubMed is that while it has free articles, it will not always tell you whether the library owns the article. So you might find that there's no full text access. But remember, I don't care if a database has full text access to something because I know we can get access to that. And if you speak with your librarian, you will learn the quick, less than 5-minute trick for figuring out how to get access to the full text within hours and within 1 to 2 days. All right, so in both of those, just like in PsycInfo, you have a lot of great limiters. So you can limit your search by the type of article, just like we talked about in PsycInfo. And if you click on additional filters, you can see that they had age and they have sex and species. So just like in PsycInfo, these specialized databases have advanced features. They're not always the same, but you should definitely get in the habit of looking for these because they can be powerful limiters in your search. All right, so the final thing about PubMed and Medline, but I'm going to focus in on PubMed rather than taking you into Medline with full text because I think that you're going to end up using PubMed more often. I prefer the mesh database that is in the Medline search tool, but this will also work well for you if you know about it. So notice this is the search box for for PubMed, and I can put my search terms in there, but I have not done that in this instance. Instead, I want you to go down to the MESH database. We call that MESH. It stands for Medical Subject Headings. And it's very similar to the Thesaurus that we saw in PsycInfo. So this is what the search box looks like for the MESH database. Notice I put in transgender, and it's listing for me any of the index terms, the ones that are predominantly used to tag each of the articles for the word transgender. So in prepping for this presentation, that's as far as I got with my slides. So let me jump into the live tool right here. So this is the live tool. And if I click on transgender persons here, notice that it gives me interesting ways to narrow it. So first, it tells me what the terminology stands for. It tells me when it was introduced, and then it gives me ways to narrow it down. So if really what I'm looking for is something that's related to psychology, I can click on it here. If I'm looking for more stats, I can click on this. This list changes depending on the term. So another option could be, I've been working with a lot of biology students on cystic fibrosis. Actually, let's just go with depression, since we're talking about medical terms. So you can see here, they have different options, and you might have one, maybe you were really meaning bipolar disease, but if you click on the term, it'll give you the more expansive list. So isn't that an amazing list? You could understand if there's a genetic connection. You can narrow your search down just to psychology. You can look at the epidemiology, so how does it manifest itself? Yeah, within a population, and then how it actually begins with etiology. So with any of these, I can add to search builder. So if I don't want to add any of the subtopics, I can just click on add to search builder and then run my search in PubMed. Or if I prefer, I can narrow it down to one of these. So I'm going to narrow it down to psychology, add that to search builder. Notice that it provides this slash. So it's going to only choose the articles that have a tag that is depression and psychology. And so I go ahead and run that search. And you'll see that now we're back on the same screen of PubMed. It's narrowed it down. I have my options to narrow down by the type of publication. So here's my review articles. I'm going to narrow it down to the last 5 years so that I can see the most recent literature. And I'm going to make sure that through the additional filters that I'm going to narrow it down to humans. And I'm going to narrow it down to adolescents and see what we find. So this is an example of a really refined search. We got 466 articles, and now we can see things that are related. So here's factors affecting quality of life after a stroke in young adults. It must be, like I said before, narrowing it down to adolescents. Oh, I see. It didn't narrow it down to adolescents. We had to check mark it. I apologize. So now we're down to the ones that are specific to what I was interested in. So hopefully these will definitely have a centering in on adolescents, like this one right here. So that looks great. All right, so that is PubMed, and I think we're coming close to our time for this, but I want to move us into one last database. And so let me go to the library homepage. I'm going to scroll down to databases A to Z. I'm going to go to subjects and scroll down to psychology and use my best bets to go to Web of Science. So for this one, like I said, this is cross-searching almost all the sciences. So you'll probably need to do some narrowing once we get to the search results, but they have a lot of amazing limiters. So notice here that I've already entered in the original search we were doing, college students and happiness. If I wanted to, I could add additional rows. And so instead of doing happiness up there, I could do happiness down here, or joy, or even depression. So I can broaden the search to the things that I'm most interested in that relate to that concept. So let's go ahead and run this search. You can see I have 5,458 results. Got some really good results here. They're sorting it by relevance. Over here on the left-hand side are quick filters. You can see I can quickly narrow down to review articles, but they have a lot of other cool things. Like this is looking at the major subject areas. So if what I'm really interested in is things that are related to, so showing me things in order of what has the most coverage, but maybe I'm interested, I'm going to go ahead and resort this alphabetically, take a look at what some of the options are here. And I was hoping to see if there's something more behavioral. So well, here's education research. That might be one thing that I'd narrow it down to. I definitely want it to be the psychiatry and psychology. So you can see that I can get rid of a lot of these other ones by paying. This is what I was looking for, social psychology. So this can help you narrow and refine your search. And so we went from 5,000 down to this 637. We can narrow this by date ranges. So I can just go ahead and mark the last 5 years and refine my search again down to 355. And now add it down to type of publication. So there we have those. So if I want to do review articles, it looks like there's 10 review articles. And so that's something that I can do to really powerfully narrow down my search to something that I'm interested in. The other cool thing in here is that right over here, you can see that instead of relevance, I could resort this by the number of times it's been cited. So what I mean by that is right here, there's a number. This is the number of references that they had inside this article. So when they created the article, these are all their references. They cite each one of these in order to develop this particular article. But if I go to this one, 80 citations, this is since it's been published, it's been cited 80 times. And now I can see which articles cited it. So these are going to be even more recent than the last 5 years. So these are going to be the most current things that have utilized the information in that article to support their own research. So that's a really cool feature that I really love using. The final thing that I'll tell you, well, it's not the final thing. The final thing I'll tell you about searching for finding articles for a literature review or something like that is if you go to Full Text Finder right here, notice that Full Text Finder is next to every single article. Usually when you see Full Text Finder in our other databases, it means that the full text is available in one of our other databases. In this case, it's just applied to all of them, but that's mainly because within this database, which it's funny, I'm seeing everything is listed as free full text from the publisher, so I kind of don't even need it. But if I click on Full Text Finder, it's going to let me know if it's available in one of our other databases, and if it's not in one of our databases, then it's going to send me to Interlibrary Loan where I can request it. So this is saying that it's available through one of our tools, and if I click on it, it's going to take me directly to it. So this is pretty awesome of a tool. It's just got so much power to it. And like I said before, you don't ever really want to, oh, it's interesting. This one actually doesn't have the full text in it. Oh, no, there it is. PDF is right there. So we'd have access to that. So don't stress so much about whether something has full text access. Start learning how to use the limiters and understand the way that you can search. And also the roles that each of these databases might play in your search. The final thing that I did want to show you, so I'm going to go ahead and take away each of these. So I'm taking away some of the things I refined. I'm back to the 5,400. See how you can analyze results up here? This is not going to be useful to you for most of your research, but if you are somebody who's a junior or senior thinking about going into graduate school, and this is the topic that most interests you, let's say that we're most interested in, I'm going to take away depression so that we're really focusing in on joy. And so of these 422 articles, let's analyze these results. First, it tells me what fields are specializing in this topic. So a lot of it's educational scientific disciplines, educational research, multidisciplinary, psychology. But what I can change up here, I can change this to affiliations. So this will tell us which universities are producing the most research on this topic. And that might help you decide which graduate school you want to go to, if this is something that you want to continue to pursue. So that's one of the options you have. You could then click on down here to see what the articles are. Another option that you have is to change this to author. and see who publishes the most in this area. So that might be somebody that you want to track down to get some mentorship from. So anyway, that is it. I hope that you found today helpful. If you need additional help, please contact the library. Let me go ahead and share my screen one more time so I can show you how you can do that. You can go back to the library homepage. And the best option is to go to research appointments and click here. And you'll see who is available for appointments. These are all of our research librarians, and though we have areas of specialty, my area is psychology, I guarantee you they're just as smart as I am about all these tools. A lot of it's about technique and just being highly aware of what the resources available are. So you could click on my name, and then you would be able to find what time I would be available. So Monday, look, I have tons of availability. And you would just fill out this form. It would go directly on my calendar, and we would have that appointment. You can do a video chat session with us, or you can come in person, and we'll let you know where to meet. All right, well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for watching this video. You take care. Bye.